So about Buggy. Buggy has to be one of the most well thought out characters in the story. I mean, not how he acts because he's an idiot, but his roles, and how far ahead Oda had planned his character out. He was originally one of the first villains in the story, a pirate captain that controlled a small town in the East Blue. His arc was more comedic than serious. No one would have thought that he would turn out to be anything major, but then we see him once again, and this time at Locktown, where he tries to execute Luffy, but instead is stopped by a dragon that struck him with lightning. So yeah, this time again he was brought back, but it was for laughs mostly, because at this point he was already set up as a gag character, so I don't think anyone genuinely thought things would end off with Buggy of all people acting off Luffy, especially when things were only just starting to ramp up a bit. So yeah, Buggy fails to execute Luffy and Luffy ends up escaping, and instead he ended up being the one caught by Smoker. So things seem to be pretty much over at that point for Buggy, and that's what it seemed for a while, because the next time he will show up will be around 300-ish episodes later. But then Buggy shows up left field in the story, once again now being the third time he has shown up, which is during the Impo Down arc, and at this point is when things really started to shift for him. I mean, he's still a comedy relief character, but he was also given a more important role than comedic relief. He was helping Luffy reach the lower levels, in exchange for the lock pulls that he had. Tuta had apparently pointed towards some great treasure, but while they are doing that, one thing leads to another, and on their way out, somehow Buggy is able to amass a massive amount of prisoners to work under him, even ones that were jailed on lower floors than him and should have been stronger than him. And because he was able to not only escape Impo Down, but also get a massive chunk of the prisoner population out with him and to work under him, he had been offered to work with the world government as a warlord. Now at this point he is seen as a legitimate threat to the world government. We know he's still the same person as he was at the start of the story, so we already know that he's not really an actual threat. But if all we had to go off on was the things he had done without actually knowing him, most people would come to the same conclusion. And not to mention that it was also revealed that he had connections to Shanks, the person who was the cause of the story happening in the first place, and at this point in time he was one of the 4 emperors. But then fast forward 2 years and some months, after the war and Reverie happens, and with how Crocodile and more recently Doflamingo acted, they all decided to abolish the warlord system, and just like that, everything Buggy had built up was gone, and the last we saw of him was his island being raided by marines, and he ran for it while his crewmates would fight for him. At this point I'm convinced that Buggy has a more important role, not just for comedic relief but for a bigger purpose, and possibly even impacting the series at its core, because you don't just make a random introductory character part of one of the 3 great powers. And I still have yet to even finish listing off all the things and events Buggy has gone through in his life, because we also learned that he knows many other great pirates besides Shanks. He had grown up on Roger's ship, fought against Whitebeard and his crew, and even knew Blackbeard when he was younger. So for now he's out of the story, but later on he'll be revived again back into the story, even more influential when he was a warlord, which is what I wanted to talk about today. How Buggy in one way or another will once again leave his mark on the story. Before that though, remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future videos. So first and foremost I want to say this, Buggy is a wildcard type of character. It's hard to judge when and where exactly he could show up, because he shows up at the most random times at the story where you forgot about him completely. So I'll try my best to make predictions, but you're gonna have to take them with a pinch of salt. Crazy how a character like Buggy is hard to make theories about than other characters like Lucci, for example. Someone who has been raised since birth pretty much to be a killing machine and handle the world government's dirty work. Someone who had always acted on his dark justice versus a guy in a clown suit. But yeah, anyways, first we have to think about what exactly happened to Buggy since we last saw him, which was, as I said, being raided by marines. And I really think there's basically no chance of him being caught. There's no reason to. We won't revisit Impo Down again, so what reason was there to have him be locked back up again? So in that department I think his escape is basically guaranteed, especially with all the people he had keeping the marines busy, so it should be pretty easy. The real question is what happens after he escapes. At this point I imagine he would just lay low for a while. He brought his closest members like Mr. 3 and Alvida with him, so afterwards he's probably just in some town laying low, maybe one of Shanks' territory islands, because I know Shanks wouldn't mind helping him out if he asked. He would just be recollecting himself until a point comes where Oda can reunite him with Luffy, because all the times he was brought back to the story it had involved Luffy in some way. And assuming I'm correct about him seeking shelter in one of Shanks' territories, I think the time that this will happen is when they go to Elbath, because Elbath is one of the territories that Shanks has control over. Well, it's not confirmed, but it is heavily implied, since both are heavily inspired by Viking culture, and at some point they will visit it. Not directly after Wano, but somewhere in the near future. But as for what he will do, that's really hard to say. He had traveled with Roger, so he might have some info that Luffy may need, or something completely different. We don't know exactly a whole lot about Elbath, so it's hard to say. And as I said, Buggy himself is a wildcard character, and to try to estimate how exactly he would do things in an island we know little about, it's kind of tough without random guesses, but I'm pretty confident that he'll be in Elbath. Past that though, it's just a guessing game honestly, but him being introduced in an arc as important as that, his role will be pretty substantial. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on what Oda has in store for Buggy's future. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe for future videos. Peace.